How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Satellites are working, but I think the turkeys got pardoned and the gremlins took over in the system. So welcome. It is Eric Erickson here nationwide. The phone number 877-973-7425 as we get all the bugs sorted out between us and space and back with satellites and internet and everything else. I want to start with a point I made yesterday, and I am flummoxed by some of the antics going on and around the White House, and I got a sneaking suspicion of what's happening. Let me start with my suspicion. The president came back into office January 20th, just hard charging. The president came back in a whirlwind of activity, and since January 20th, the White House has been going fairly nonstop. And we had the government shut down in October, and the president couldn't shut down with the shutdown because he had to go to Israel, then he had to go to Asia, then he had to come back. I think his team is exhausted. And that is my guess for an amateur hour that's going on right now, because I don't think it's anything other than amateur hour, and I'm kind of flummoxed by what I'm seeing coming out of the White House in the last couple of weeks, because it's deeply uncharacteristic of the president, and in turn, the president's frustrations have been reflected on his social media tirades about the Supreme Court and tariffs and the seditious six, whatever you want to call them. That's what the White House term is called them. In fact, I looked at the rapid response team from the White House. And essentially all day, they have been tweeting out about the seditious six, they call them, the members of Congress. That's about the only issue they're covering right now. You've got members of Congress who are in open revolt, threatening to quit early and hand the House to the Democrats. The president came out with a statement that he wanted to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, then had to go to the president's team and convey to them that there was no support among the Republicans in the House to get those subsidies passed, so the president's having to rework it. I think the president's team may be exhausted. He's worn down. He has been hard charging, and I think they need a break. That's my guess. Let's just consider the evidence here. Consider the evidence. First is the health care subsidy. All of this stuff has happened in the past week or so. Health care subsidy. White House says the president wants to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies to insurance companies to help lower costs for Americans. Never checked with members of Congress, and there's no support from the members of Congress to get it done. Why did the president get out over his skis on this? Well, he had to be advised by people in the White House that he could get this done. Remember, in the White House, now we have the series of stories that have come out that a growing number of Republicans in Congress are increasingly frustrated that they're being taken for granted. And some of you think, well, your job is to do what Donald Trump wants. And you may think that, but it's not really true. We're not a parliamentary democracy. The executive branch and the legislative branch are separate, and they get some input. And the president's team has run roughshod over him now for 10 months. And suddenly you go through this November election, Republicans had it in their head that the Democrats were so battered, broken, and bruised, there's no way they could recover. And suddenly not only did the Democrats come out on tops, but the polling realigns, and it looks like next year's going to be a bloodbath. And all these Republicans are like, well, what did we do this for? So you get that. Then you get the additional scenario of Marjorie Taylor Greene deciding to quit, lowering the House majority. And the stories come out about the other Republicans are ready to quit. And why? It's because they're getting beat up. They're getting battered. There's no thanks. It's not a great job. The White House is giving them nothing. None of them can take credit for grants in their districts. None of them can get agencies to respond to their phone calls. The executive branch agencies treat them like dirt, even though they're members of Congress. They're not used to a level of disrespect coming from their own side. They're used to it from the other side. They're just not used to it from their own side. And so you got these guys they're just ready to quit and hand it over to Hakeem Jeffries. And that's a people management issue. And when you're running hard and you're charging fast, you sometimes forget the care and feeding of those you need to make things work. The congressional relationships really matter if the president wants to get his agenda, and they really matter if the president doesn't want Hakeem Jeffries to become speaker before the election. Then there's the Mark Kelly matter. Again, the White House's rapid response team this morning, the only thing they're really pushing out is the seditious six. They're retweeting videos of people who are blasting the so-called seditious six, Mark Kelly and the others. And you got the Defense Department coming out and saying you gotta investigate Mark Kelly. You might prosecute him. The death penalty is a possibility in the prosecution. This is stupid. I don't care if you think Mark Kelly broke the law. I don't really care, because this is politics. Everything in D.C. is politics. You can say that everything should be prosecuted, but you don't really believe that because you didn't want Donald Trump prosecuted. If no one's above the law, then Donald Trump and the classified documents, I've got some friends say, no, he was president. He could unclassify documents if he wanted, but there's a process, and it's an untested area of law. So the prosecution of Donald Trump was legitimate because the area of law was untested, but they should not have prosecuted him. They genuinely should never have prosecuted Donald Trump, and the Republicans should not even attempt to prosecute Mark Kelly. Why? Whether you think he did something wrong or not, good luck finding a judge in the District of Columbia and a jury in the District of Columbia that's been engaged regularly in nullification of prosecutions. Good luck finding one of them to convict Mark Kelly. You know what you do in the process is you make him a hero. Look at Donald Trump getting prosecuted by the Biden administration. They helped Donald Trump get elected. Ron DeSantis was ahead of Donald Trump in repeated polling in the run-up to 2024 until they indicted Trump, and suddenly Donald Trump got so far ahead in the polling, no one was ever going to top him. The prosecutions of Donald Trump made Donald Trump a martyr to a cause and rallied people to him. In the same way now, Mark Kelly is sending out fundraising appeals. The money that he's raking is an insane amount of money in a very quick time. He's getting very sympathetic profiles. Gavin Newsom wishes he could get the president to threaten to indict him. I mean, we were headed down the road, and I couldn't believe it myself, to a Gavin Newsom consolidated Democratic base of support against Donald Trump. And suddenly Gavin Newsom is out the door and Mark Kelly walks in, someone who's perceived, rightly or wrongly, as more moderate. He's got a sympathetic profile as someone who went to war, astronaut, married to Gabby Giffords, who was nearly politically assassinated by a nut job. And now the Trump team has elevated him. And by the way, and again, none of this is Donald Trump. It's the team around him. I think they're exhausted. They're making big mistakes. And then there's the judicial vacancies. There are at least 18 district court vacancies that have been vacant for multiple months. The president has expressed his contempt for the Federalist Society, but that's where you go to get conservative judges. There is no other organization out there. And by the way, the conservative Federalist Society judges are the ones that are continuing to give Donald Trump wins repeatedly, pushing back against these progressive federal judge picks. The courts of appeals are overwhelmingly made up of Federalist Society members who are aiding and abetting the president of the United States in pushing back against the progressives. But because of the president's skepticism voiced publicly of the Federalist Society, his judicial vetting team is behind, and we risk leaving seats open for Democrats. If the Democrats take back the Senate next year, they're not going to fill these seats. There are 18, and they're all in red states. So it's not like Democrats even have a veto. It's not like they can object with the blue slip and slow it down. These are 18 seats in 9 red states. Ohio, Florida, Texas in particular have a number of open seats. They've been open for months on end. There hasn't been a single nomination. This is like the Lindsey Halligan nomination for the Eastern District of Virginia. They screwed that up. It took so long to appoint her. Judges intervened and picked someone else based on a statute. The president says, no, it's my right to do it. He picks her. And now the Comey and Letitia James cases have been thrown out because the Trump team screwed up the process of picking the U.S. attorney. And then there's the Ukraine deal. It was rushed through sight unseen, surprised the president and Marco Rubio. Rubio's been scrambling to improve the deal, working with U.S. allies. It looks like Ukraine is willing to accept the framework from the Rubio deal. The U.S. is meeting the Russians today. It was supposed to be secret, but someone on the American side leaked that they were meeting, and now it's all over the headlines. They're meeting in Abu Dhabi. I think they need Thanksgiving break. I think they are exhausted. I think they're worn out. And I think they need a break. But sometimes there's no downtime. Sometimes you got to stay with it. And I know they've got to be exhausted. Donald Trump is exhausting to cover. I sit behind a microphone 3 hours a day. And I'm exhausted talking about Donald Trump. I'm exhausted from the coverage. His team has got to be worn out. There's never downtime. He takes these foreign trips. He's up the whole time. He keeps them up talking. They've got to be exhausted. They need rest. But, there are times where you just can't rest, and you've got to be on your A game. And I got to say, I think a lot of these guys are acting like whatever is happening on Twitter is reality, and it's not. Winning the fight against Mark Kelly on Twitter only elevates Mark Kelly. Getting a bunch of people on Twitter to decide that extending the health care subsidies for Obamacare is a good thing, that doesn't play with Republican members of Congress. Attacking Republican members of Congress for not being sufficiently loyal doesn't help your cause. And it's not Trump, it's the people around him. And they've taken to bullying people who disagree. They've taken to bullying members of Congress. I think they're exhausted. It has converted into just trying to bully people into getting their way. I don't know whether Susie Wiles or the president or somebody can intervene, but someone needs to intervene and just let these people rest and reset. They need the rest. They need the reset. They need to slow it down. They're beginning to make costly mistakes that can undermine this president's presidency. And the foregone conclusion at this point from too many of these people is that the House is going to go to the Democrats, and they're beginning to operate like it. And that's a self-defeating proposition. When you already think you're going to lose, guess what? You tend to lose. They're not operating from a position where they think they're going to win, and that's going to compromise everything. Welcome. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, we got to go to the President of the United States. Donald Trump has pardoned the turkeys. This is him at the White House.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them, I shouldn't say this. I was going to call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people. I wouldn't pardon them. I wouldn't care what Melania told me. Darling, I think it would be a nice thing to do. I won't do it, darling.
So I personally think for all of the norm shattering that this president is engaged in, I mean, he should send both turkeys to the Axeman. I mean, we got a supply problem. I mean, send the turkeys off. I think the turkey pardon ceremony, honestly, is the dumbest thing that presidents are asked to do. I know some of you can disagree. You love to see the turkeys pardoned. You're not. I pity the fool who is emotionally invested in the pardoning of two turkeys at the White House. If I were president, I don't know that I'd even do it. I'm not pardoning turkeys. That's a stupid idea. I've got important things to do. But every president, they pardon the turkeys, and I wouldn't do it. I pluck them and smoke them. Gun them, pluck them, smoke them. They would be delicious. So these are giant turkeys. You know, you get the giant turkeys, and they're too tough. I sure hope, by the way, yours are thawing out. I checked mine, put them in the refrigerator on Thursday. They're still a little firm. They better. We got another day before I need them. You need to make sure your turkeys are thawed out, people. Don't, whatever you do, please, for the love of God, do not put a frozen turkey in a fryer. Please, that disaster awaits you if you do. Old Glory Bank could be your bank. If your relationship with your current bank is problematic, well, Old Glory Bank, they'd love to take your business. If you're a business, they have great business opportunities for you, from lending programs to checking. I've got a no interest checking and savings account. There are no fees, but there's no interest. They have interest-bearing accounts with fees. They would love to have you. You can go to oldglorybank.com/Eric today. Started by a group of conservatives out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Old Glory Bank is spread nationwide. It's an online bank, but they figured out how you can deposit cash at 88,000 retail locations around the country. They have a great app, a great bill pay system. They put a lot of thought into their technology, which makes them really good. oldglorybank.com/Eric. oldglorybank.com/ERICK. Old Glory Bank would love to have you. If you got questions, go check them out there. If you're a veteran, first responder, active duty military, they have really great discounts for you. Loans, CDs, they're a full service bank. oldglorybank.com/Eric. oldglorybank.com/ERICK. Check them out today. Find a bank by conservatives for conservatives. The fastest growing bank in the country. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. I'm going to be stepping out for the rest of the week because I got a lot of cooking to do tomorrow for Thursday. And so if you want to call in, today's the day to do it. You can also text Eric, ERICK, to 33777 to get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, so much more. Follow me on Instagram over Thanksgiving for all the food pics. I'm sure I'll be cooking. James, I want to go to your phone call next. Welcome to the show, James. How are you?
Hey, Erickson. How you doing? My name is James. I'm a first-time caller. Been listening to you for a couple of years, and I would like to know if you would let me call out my 13th congressional district representative, Mr. David Scott of Georgia.
Oh yeah.
And so here's my thing. I feel like you're on a national platform. I want to know if you would consider promoting term limits throughout the Congress, and I think that's the problem. And I'm calling out David Scott is because I've went to his office, I wrote him letters, and I just want to ask the one question that's bothered me: what's his stance on term limits? You know, and I'm so frustrated, Eric. You know, I'm a retired soldier, 25 years in service. I just feel like, you know, what's happened in the country, you know, this government shutdown should have never happened because those guys supposed to be elected to represent our interests. How do you let people go hungry, you know? And I'm just getting to the point where I'm just so frustrated. And I was asking you, would you consider maybe talking to your people and see maybe we should change our
James,
you know?
Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is trying to get a number of states together. Under the Constitution, the way you amend the Constitution is 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate agree, and then 3/4 of the states have to agree. The other way is that 2/3 of the states demand Congress call a constitutional convention, and then 3/4 of the states approve what comes out of it. And DeSantis believes that we're never going to get Congress to agree to it, so let's get 2/3 of the states together to insist on term limits for members of Congress, and Congress can't block that effort. Assuming 3/4 of the states then vote for it, we're in good stead. And I think more than half the states have term limits on state legislatures. Look at David Scott. David Scott, for those of you who don't know, he's a congressman from Georgia. He is long rumored to be in terrible health. There have been allegations about dementia, among other things, for David Scott. Democratic colleagues say he is hardly ever seen anymore. He's in declining health. Everyone in Georgia knows he's in declining health, but he keeps running again. Side note, his voters keep electing him. So, yeah, I'm at this point, for a long time, I thought we need term limits on the staff. The congressmen don't really matter. It's the staff. You do term limits on the congressmen. The staff are going to become more and more powerful, but they already are. So, yeah, let's try to get term limits done. The president is term limited. Term limit the members of Congress. Particularly on the Democratic side, we've got these 80 and 90-year-olds hanging around. And in the Senate, they're all geriatrics. So do some meaningful reform. Term limits perhaps is it. Roll over. But I'll tell you something else we have to do in all honesty. Some of you aren't going to like it. We need to expand the House of Representatives to 1,000 members and pay them more. You don't like this idea, I know. Let me talk to you about it. If you feel like Washington is broken, and to a degree it is, although remember, gridlock is a feature, not a bug of our system. It's difficult to get things done in Washington. The founders wanted it to be difficult. You can get things done at the state level. I say, why not try term limits? But also, I think the House of Representatives should be expanded to 1,000 members, and we need to pay them more. We continue to put more and more restrictions on members of Congress's ability to make money, and then we don't pay them much of anything. And so only the wealthy can get there, and if not the wealthy, the people who are willing to be corrupt. We have insider trading scandals in Congress because they're trying to make ends meet. They're traveling back and forth to Washington, D.C. They're there a lot. They do a thankless job. Nobody likes Congress. Pay them more to incentivize a better class of people running for Congress. If you paid them $250,000 instead of the $100-some-odd thousand they get, you'd incentivize more people thinking, you know what, I can leave my job behind and run for Congress and not punish my family. Otherwise, what you get when you're paying them what we're paying them right now, less than $200,000 a year, I believe it is, only the really rich, the well-off, the retired can make a habit of it, and so you're losing people in your community. But then that's the other thing. When the Congress was originally started and we had representation in the House of Representatives, it was easy to know your member of Congress. Now every member of Congress represents about 750,000 people. We need more congressmen, so each congressman represents a smaller number of people, and we all know our congressmen. I don't care about the senators. 2 per state, that's the way it was designed. They represent the states, not the people. But when you've got representatives who represent massive numbers of people, in many cases spread across large geographic areas, you can't know your congressman, and they're far more beholden to special interests than they are you. When you know your member of Congress and your member of Congress knows you, your ideas are far more likely to be represented in Washington, D.C. instead of the special interests who claim to represent you. Your congressman is supposed to represent you. Right now, special interests represent you because no congressman can get to know every person in his district because his districts are so large and so populated. You know, one of the original ideas in the Constitution that they rejected was to automatically increase the Congress over time. And I read somewhere, don't hold me to it, but I think that we would have like 8,000 members of Congress now for the House of Representatives. Had that rule been placed in the Constitution, they rejected it. But we should have at least 1,000. That would lower the number of people each congressman represents. He's more likely to know them and their concerns. Makes it much harder for special interests to game the system when you have 1,000 of them instead of 435 of them. Maybe raise it to 2,000. I don't know. But, you'd have to build new buildings, hire more staff. It would become more expensive. It would. But I definitely think that there's an expense that we, the people, need to pay to get better representation, because right now we have anonymous people you hardly ever see who don't really have roots in their community anymore, who have to be well off because of the salary, or they got to be corrupt out of the gate. You want real reform in Congress? You don't need a constitutional amendment to add the number of seats in the House. And you're like, oh, we hate Congress. Why do we want more of them? Because we need members who are actually representative in the House of Representatives. And very few of our representatives are representative of the people of their district anymore, because the area and the population is so large. They're far more beholden to special interests, and also they're more likely to be led by leadership. They're overworked. They're underpaid. I actually am sympathetic to that issue, because I want a better class of people in Congress, and you can't get a better class of people when you're not willing to pony up and incentivize the local doctor or the local lawyer or the local pastor or the local school teacher giving up their job to run for Congress, and it not being a financial burden on their families for them to do it. So you got a bunch of old retirees, you got a bunch of wealthy people, and you have a bunch of people who are funded by special interests. You don't have a lot of people who are of the people for the people. You got a lot of people pretending to be of the people and for the people now. And it's real hard to get congressmen who are of the people and for the people. When you've got 435 of them, they're not well paid, and they're completely unrepresentative of the people they represent these days. That's real reform, and I know I'm in the minority, and I know everybody hates the idea, but I do believe I'm right on this one. Now, back to the phones. I want to go to Ed. Welcome to the show, Ed. How are you?
I'm just fine, Eric, and I appreciate your comments, and I respect your comments about 1,000 congressmen. But I'll just point out that we have thousands of congressmen, but they're in our state legislatures. And the problem here is it's not that we have not enough legislators in Congress. The problem is that Congress has too much money that it spends piled up in one place.
Look, I think that's a fair point, but also, I mean, we do have a massive federal government with very little legislative oversight because of the reduced number of them. If Congress is willing to do less, then yeah, we don't need more than 435. But I don't sense that the public has an appetite for Congress to do less than it's doing. I do wish that we would also get rid of the direct election of senators and go back to the state legislative appointment of senators, so we actually have real state representation in Washington.
Man, I'm all with you on that Senate thing. That is one of the most significant emasculations of state legislatures I know of in the past century.
Yes. Yeah, and by the way, it's worth pointing out, it was the progressive left out of Wisconsin in the early 1900s that came up with that idea. They, by the way, also were not fans of expanding Congress. But, to Ed's point, we do have a lot of state legislators, but they've got their own areas that they legislate in. Congress has Article 1, Section 8. They've got, 16, 17 areas they represent, and they do things in. Their area of expertise and their governing portfolio has expanded just by the nature of the growth of the country. I think we need more of them. I really do. I don't like to come out on that idea because I'm not a big government guy, but I think you actually want to shrink the government. You need more members of Congress there to hold the government accountable and be way more representative of you than a special interest. How many of you actually do know your member of Congress? In the early republic, everybody knew their member of Congress. Do you? I do because of my position, but I bet most of you have never encountered your member of Congress. They've never knocked on your door. They've never asked directly for your vote. You've never been to one of their town halls. It's harder and harder to know your member of Congress. And they're supposed to be representative of you. How can they represent you when you don't even know them? That's the problem. It's like the affordability issue. We talk a lot about affordability. By the way, J.D. Vance and I had an interaction on Twitter. You know, I like the vice president. We have a cordial relationship. I really do disagree with him. He thinks I'm too focused on Ukraine. And as I replied to him in a tweet yesterday, I said, I spend way more time talking about affordability than I do Ukraine. He put up a tweet, and let me just read you his tweet. It's in the show notes, at the top of the show notes, the whole exchange. If you text Eric to 33777, the very first thing is a link. I've invited him on the show. He says he's going to come back. He put this up. After 4 years of house prices doubling and in some areas tripling, many young people feel priced out of the American dream of homeownership. A welfare fraud scandal in Minnesota reveals that large numbers of new arrivals aren't assimilating and are funneling our tax dollars to literal terrorist groups. An innocent woman was set on fire in Chicago as the mayor resists federal law enforcement resources to bring peace to one of our great cities. The Obamacare insurance system is buckling under its own weight. The country's $38 trillion in debt. Our administration is working hard on addressing all these problems. But you know what really fires up the Beltway GOP? Not any of the above. Instead, the political class is really angry that Trump administration may finally bring a 4-year conflict in Eastern Europe to a close. I'm not even talking about the substance of their views. Much of what these people have said about the Ukraine war has been proven wrong, but whatever, we can agree to disagree. But the level of passion over this one issue, when your own country has serious problems, is bonkers. It disgusts me. Show some passion for your own country. Now, I replied to him and said, this is Jimmy Carter-esque. The vice president seems to think we can't deal with foreign policy and domestic policy. And he challenged me, told him, come on the show. He says he's willing to come on the show, have a good conversation about this. It all bothers me. I just think he's engaged in a little rhetorical sleight of hand where essentially his position is either you give J.D. Vance his way on Ukraine or you don't care about domestic issues. I care greatly about these issues and have talked about every single one of the ones he listed, but I've also talked about how bad the Ukraine deal is. Marco Rubio has improved it. We do have problems, but also, as I pointed out, the president and J.D. Vance have backed tariffs, which have directly contributed to increases in prices in this country. We do have real problems in the country. All of these things I've talked about. But this sort of rhetorical device of if you don't give me what I want on Ukraine, all you care about is Ukraine and not these domestic issues, I think is a rhetorical sleight of hand to distract from the fact that actually we do care about these issues. But unless the president of the United States and his team are willing to advance public policy to solve them, they're not going to be solved. And the public policy they've advanced is tariffs, which have raised the price of aluminum and steel and lumber for houses. It's raised the price of consumer goods. It's restricted and repressed wage growth. These are real problems that are related to it. The problem with the affordability crisis, though, is that it's much more multifaceted. Is there a problem with houses? Yes. Is there a problem with wages? Yes. But they're not actually the same thing. There are problems causing wages to not keep up with inflation, tariffs. There are problems causing the home value problems, supply demands, tariffs, other things. It's more complicated than that. We do need to have conversations, but nobody in Washington seems to want to have conversations. And by the way, I would note it's the administration itself that advanced this Ukraine plan that members of Congress don't like and that Marco Rubio himself doesn't like and has been working behind the scenes to change. We got to deal with all of it and say we can't deal with one unless we deal with the other. I think we need to deal with both and care about both foreign policy and domestic policy. I'm looking forward to the vice president coming on the show to talk about all this. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. A University of Georgia football player was arrested on Sunday on charges of fleeing and eluding a police officer and reckless driving. Police said it all started from a traffic stop in downtown Commerce, Georgia, turning into two high-speed pursuits topping 100 miles an hour on Sunday, after an officer attempted to pull over a driver who ran a stop sign. Commerce Police released an unofficial report where they said that the officer was speaking with the driver, later identified as the mother of the primary suspect, when another vehicle blew past at more than 100 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. The officer abandoned the initial stop and attempted to catch the speeding vehicle driven by Nyler Daniels. Daniels continued through a series of roads as the chase intensified. It appears that he was trying to get them away from giving his mother a ticket. My goodness. What a bizarre story. The University of Georgia keeps just outshining itself with the driving habits of it's y'all from the north, come on down to the SEC. We teach you defensive driving techniques. Goodness gracious. My goodness. Let me tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them and save $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. You'll get all 3 of them for less than $200. You go to EdenPureDeals.com, put in the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. You get 3 of them. They're air purifiers, so they get rid of dust and pollen, all that stuff. They kill 99.9% of bacteria and viruses. And then where they really shine is odor elimination. They generate ozone, and it simply positively wipes out the odors. You go to EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. You get 3 for less than $200, saving $200.